should know. I'm going to go pretty quick through this. World War I is pretty fast. There's going to be a lot of pictures. It's going to be a lot of that. So I'll just tell you. But another thing that happened too with all this stuff, and I'm sorry for the obstruction there with the recording, but one of the things in the progressive era too, that there was this sense that America was, the gap between rich and poor, of course, was widening. They wanted to create a situation where there was taxes, and for the very first time in American history, we actually have an income tax in the progressive era. And that's what the 16th Amendment is. Now, this is pretty crazy, but and I just paid my taxes last night. It was so awful. I owed the government $3,800. How lame is that? Thanks, 16th Amendment. Thank you very much. So that all that money can go to the $18 trillion national debt. But anyways, 16th Amendment. At the beginning of when this was started, it was actually voluntary to pay taxes. They didn't actually force people to do it until a little bit later. Can you believe that? Like voluntary. Oh yeah, I want to pay taxes. Yeah. So what they had to do in the 1920s and 1930s is, this actually gave the government the power. The government actually started to use the power, but it was totally voluntary at first. And by the way, that's on your tax form, by the way. Like when you guys are doing your taxes this season, on your 1040, you actually have the choice to donate money on your taxes to the government. So, yeah, whatever. I don't want to do that. Other things, too, that came about is this. It's called the Federal Reserve Act. Now, the Federal Reserve Act basically created 12 different banks throughout the United States that print money and also serve as lenders of what you call last resort. In other words, if a bank runs out of money in your city, which is Fresno, the nearest Federal Reserve Bank is in San Francisco, and San Francisco's bank will then loan money to Fresno's bank. Or if you live in Chicago, for example, that's where the big Federal Reserve Bank is. It's a way to shore up the banking system so that we don't have another what you call an economic panic or economic crisis or economic disaster. So, and if you look at your dollar bills and stuff, you'll see that it says Federal Reserve Note clearly at the top. And you can even see, if you look real close, you can see all the Masonic symbolism in there, and aliens and stuff. So you can definitely see what the United States, you can see where everything was printed. It's pretty cool. Like most people don't even realize that. But that's something that the progressives decided to actually do, is to shore up the banking system. Another thing that happened as well is the birth of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP. And this was started in 1909 by a guy named W.E.B. Du Bois, whose picture is right there. And one of the things that the progressive era failed to do, and you can evaluate that in your paper even, like you could talk about the progressive era and how it didn't do jack squat for race relations in this country. Progressives typically were white and middle class, and they didn't really speak to the needs of people of color, or the only other diverse group that they would have spoken to is women. But the progressives pretty much didn't do anything to challenge Jim Crow laws, for example. They never stepped in when thousands upon thousands of African Americans were being lynched in the South. Lynching means, of course, hanging people from trees. Nor did they step in when thousands of Mexican Americans were lynched in Texas, in California, for simply being Mexican. Okay, most people don't even know that story. So the government really didn't do much in terms of improving race relations or improving the condition of people of color. And that is why you have what's called the NAACP, which is of course still around. We've had all these shootings, right, in Ferguson, and even I think last week a Mexican guy got shot in a small town in Washington. In Denver, somebody from the LGBT community was shot because of their sexual preference. We still have these problems in America that are still around, obviously, and need to be dealt with. But in the progressive era, African Americans felt it was important as an oppressed group to unite together and rise up and do something about their situation. Good idea or bad idea, I don't know. You guys decide. I think perhaps this is one of the worst decisions ever made in the United States. It is the 18th Amendment, which basically, as you know, made the sale of alcohol illegal throughout the United States. It didn't do what it was intended to do. Oftentimes, the government doesn't always, like, there's unintended consequences of laws. I think you understand what I'm saying. Like, the law is supposed to do this, but the exact opposite happens. Like, they made America dry, which made alcohol illegal to buy, sell, or produce, but yet the exact opposite actually happened, is that people were producing it like crazy and wanting it more and more. And then it led to illegal crime and gangs and Al Capone and, for example, different gangsters and all this kind of stuff. Yes, sir?
Didn't also lead to like what we call pirate stuff?
If you want to call it that, like pirates smuggling stuff across state lines, bootlegging, rum running, those are the words we associate. I guess that's kind of the same thing as pirates. Yeah, pretty much. It brings up a lot of interesting points about American history about this. And it was funny because in the 1920s, the economy was so good. We'll get to that next week. But alcohol was being bought and sold, and it was a big business. And it was also something that was not enforced uniformly throughout the United States. The police were often a big part of the business too, because they were being paid off, and there was, just kind of like today. Okay. There's like guys shooting alcohol down the sewer. Okay, well that'll get the fish happy then.